Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and in this special edition of TFiR Insights, today we have with us Apurva Joshi, or AJ, VP of Product at DigitalOcean. First of all, AJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This discussion is more or less about to understand if you do look at this, because everybody is talking about cloud native, everybody is talking about digital transformation. And if you do look at cloud or cloud native, if you look at all the pieces, it's not the old LAMP stack. You just get MySQL, everything else on a local machine and just roll it and start running. If you look at CNCF landscape, there are so many components, and that complexity not only can slow you down, it can create a lot of security issues, which will once again slow you down. Your services will go down. So cloud providers play a very big role, because what you guys are doing is you are also democratizing all those technologies. Of course, most of them are open source technologies. They're good for day one, but what happens day two, right? When you have to manage, update, upgrade. So what I do want to know from you to start this discussion with, what role do you see DigitalOcean is playing today? I'm not talking about the old days DigitalOcean, which was just like web hosting. Now you guys are offering Kubernetes and all of other things. So what role is DigitalOcean is playing in today's world to help companies, move quickly with their digital transformation or cloud native journey?
Right. And I think you pointed out pretty well, right? I mean, there's tons of innovation that has happened in this space. And the cloud native technologies, while they make everyone's life easier, there's a learning curve. It adds the complexity in a way or two, a confusion on the plethora of technologies that are out there, right? And DigitalOcean was founded on a core fundamental of making developers' life simple, right? And everything that we do, starts with simplicity, whether it's building a new product, providing that experience of a journey and of a digital transformation on our platform. Simplicity is the biggest core at what we do. So for example, when we start building things out and making bets on the technology, whether they're on a cloud native or even on the existing infrastructure, whatnot, we try and optimize for the customer segment that we serve the best, which is the individual developers, smaller startups, and SMBs, right? And their needs are very, very unique. Per se, right? So they don't need all the bells and whistles that you're going to need as a large enterprises, right? And starting with tons of different features and whatnot. And that allows us to create an experience that is really simple and cater to the basic need of this customer segment. So when they start the journey on our platform, they have the core things that they need, and it's really easy to get started. And that simplicity goes all the way up to pricing, right? So we keep the pricing similar across the different regions, regardless of where you're coming from and where you have hosted your application per se. And as well as at the root and the core, we try and provide the experience to get started easily, right? So what I mean by that, if you look at our managed Kubernetes offering, right, we provide a control plane for free. And when you combine that with the power of our droplets, that gives you generous CPU, memory, and RAM at the $5 to $10 price point, is one of the easiest service and a cheapest option to start learning Kubernetes out there in the cloud, right? And that just enables customers' journey to come up and learn cloud native technologies under $20 a month. And that's fantastic, right? So I think those are some of the approaches that we take in adapting the innovation that's coming through, while making their life and the journey in that transformation really, really simple.
When the kind of target audience, the kind of users you are targeting, you mentioned individual and SMBs now, and if we compare them with large enterprises, number one is they don't have those hefty budgets. Number two is that you do need a lot of in-house capabilities, talent, to be able to know what is Istio, what is service mesh, what is microservice, and all those things. So that investment becomes high. At the same time, they do want to be able to move faster. Nobody wants to be behind their competitors. So what are the core key factors that you offer to customers vis-a-vis, I can say I'm not comparing with anybody, but hyperscaler when you look at AWS or Azure, So when we do look at that player, as you mentioned, a lot of bells and whistles. Yes, there are a lot of features, you can get thousands of features, but they don't need all of them, right? All as SMB or individual, they just need those 5 basic things to get their site running, to get to offer their services to their mobile users. So talk about how do you differentiate by, first of all, you mentioned ease is very important. Cost is very important. I mean, when I look at your catalog, I should not get overwhelmed by, oh my God, how much is there? And then I have to be a mathematician to just calculate the pricing of a storage bucket. So please talk about the differentiation. How do you differentiate against these big players?
Right. As you clearly pointed out, right, there are tons of ways you can achieve certain things and build your applications, but there are very few core technologies that are critical to building a basic block of your application, right? And to those examples, the critical things are definitely the simplicity and the predictability of the pricing, right? Is how much is it going to cost? If I'm starting my business and I'm making these bets on this technology, if it scales and grows, what is that cost going to look like? Will I be able to save money and reinvest back into my business, right? These are some of the critical questions a lot of startups are asking themselves. And one of the transformation that we're seeing and where we see these startups and SMBs move from these hyperscalers to our platform. And the biggest reason they give is that their businesses were not viable on those platforms. When they moved to DO, they had a need for basic core technologies. They were easy to get started with. And that's price predictability and affordability allowed them to essentially save and reinvest back into their business versus having a huge bill. And I think that just resonates really well with a lot of our customers, right? And again, one of those core values or philosophy the product team here at DO has is be careful what you measure, because that drives behaviors. And what I mean by that is, we don't proactively go out and attract the multi-million-dollar larger deals from enterprises. We talk to the SMBs, right? And we measure the success of these customers. How successful are they on our platform? What are their product needs? And this allows us to stay focused and build those limited set of products, but curate them to the needs of specific customers that we're trying to serve. And that way we don't go out of our way to build features and experiences that are just catered for these larger deals and unique to few enterprises, versus what the people on the startup who are willing to roll their sleeves up and get started are trying to do.
There are many aspects of why people choose XYZ player. Of course, technology, access to the technology that you mentioned. Now there are a couple other things. Number one is vendor lock-in. What is happening with hyperscalers is that it's called data gravity. Your data also kind of become hostage because they offer a lot of things. So once you move to their platform, there's no way you can get out of that. But a lot of players, they don't want that, especially with small players, individuals. They want to be able to evaluate and be able to move from one player to other player depending on where it is. And that's how they came to DigitalOcean also, right? They were able to move around, number one. Number two is, this is an analogy we often talk about, especially in the data center world, cattle versus pets. Now, while we like to call our machines cattle, we don't want to call our customers cattle. I would like to be treated as a pet, that when I call DigitalOcean for a problem, I'm not just another ticket number. I want to be treated like, somebody important. So talk about these two factors as well. Vendor lock-in, the fear of vendor lock-in. And number two is post sales experience where, you have a problem. Also, in case of SMBs, yes, they will have problems because they don't have all those technical know-how.
No, I think those are very important points, and you hit the hammer on the nail right away, right? Because if you think about this, the vendor lock-in for smaller players is a really big problem, right? Having those 200 plus different services that allows you to do one simple aspect, and having those freemium offer and whatnot, that just makes it really easy initially to prototype or test something without realizing, how you're building these Lego blocks or the bridges between different smaller consumption that leads into a scenario where decoupling from the platform is next to impossible, right? Because it's one of those landmines that you end up creating within your application where you cannot really break one bridge without breaking everything else, right? And that is really a serious issue for the startups and SMBs who their core focus at that time is not to get confused with tons of technologies and tons of options, but to stay focused on the building the business and make the bet on the right core technologies, right? This is where the player like DigitalOcean comes in, that not providing those confusion of technologies around the entire stack or even a single stack. It just allows them to focus and build the business out and make the right bet when the business is growing and ready to scale in that perspective. So that's critical. What also we're noticing within this specific community is a new trend, right? Which is, to your point, it's Omni Cloud, right? You know, in enterprises that you'll see a notion of multi-cloud where people want to have their application across different clouds just to have a HA and a sense of security, whatnot. But there's new startups and SMB that is tech savvy and a cost, is a big thing on their mind. They're going towards a trend that we're noticing called Omni Cloud, which is they're willing to make the bet on multiple clouds for different applications where they're getting the best package and best return on their investment while they're building the business out. So they might store XYZ at a different cloud, and they might come to DO to run a specific application because it's the best platform for their need, and that saves them cost and helps them scale. And I think that trend is real. So we're seeing tons of those customers coming in, right? So that's definitely helping fuel the business much forward. And the second piece that you talked about, right? You know, the day two story. It's easy to get on the cloud, but when things don't work out well, you need to be treated as good and as special as you were if you were to be a multi-million or $1 billion company working with the larger cloud providers, right? Today, the problem with the larger cloud providers on a support and service side is just the smaller players are left behind as the customers, right? They do not get the love and care they deserve. Especially at the time where they're trying to build the business out, making the technology bets on the platform, and waiting for 1 day, 2 day, or not having the right support does not really help your cause. The approach that we take here at DO is, and especially when we are catering to that specific customer set, is the day two story is very solid. There are a set of customers that have an ability to not only reach out to us free of cost for support, and get an SLA within 2 to 3 hours, but we work with lots and lots of customers just like our family in a way. So what I mean by that they can join our internal Slack for different products, ask us questions. The engineers, the product managers, and support, everybody's involved in trying to help them out and work with them. So I think that experience that you get where you're special, your needs are met, is pretty unique. And here at DO, and what we've done amazingly well, besides building this platform for smaller customers, is we built a great community, right? Every customer that I talk to, they come and tell me they love our platform because of our community, right? They found and they learned how to code. They got into technology because of our tutorials. And I think, those are critical investments that we have built in our community, which are pretty hard to replicate.
You mentioned a lot of interesting point. You mentioned, the sources, documentation. Actually, even in my early days when I was building my own Raspberry Pi, I would land up on DigitalOcean's or Linux documentation. You guys do a great job there. You mentioned Omni Cloud, and you also talk about trends. Since we are going through this pandemic, this crisis, which may not have changed people's approach towards cloud, but it has certainly accelerated their journey towards digitalization or cloud native. Everybody it should have been done yesterday. So when you do talk about Omni Cloud, that somebody, that's true, you don't want to run everything on one cloud, especially, there can be a lot of reasons. For example, of course, in this case, we are talking a smaller company, but still a company may be a health provider, or whatever, they have to worry about compliance. They might want to keep login somewhere else, but they want to keep your data somewhere else. I mean, there are so many reasons to mix and match. They want to leverage the machine learning. But what role is this pandemic playing in not only these trends, but people's desire to mix and match different cloud offerings?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has definitely, accelerated the cloud adoption, right? There is no denial to that, right? I mean, if you look at the businesses across different cloud providers, starting with the pandemic, right? They all were struggling to keep up with the demand and capacity. And so it has essentially fast forwarded 5 years of digitalization into less than 6 to 8 months. And I think that is going to continue to play a pivotal role. I mean, this is a trend that is not going to revert back. This is a trend that has a lot of tailwind behind it, and it's only going to accelerate. The question around making a bet on a different clouds based on pandemic, I think that is an interesting one. Depending on the industry and the customer segments we're talking about, that is going to strengthen the relations with their existing cloud providers, try and build the trust, while at the same time there's a set of and a cohort of users and customers who would be trying to leverage the best in a class services, whether it's technology, whether it's price, whether it's simplicity, and make those bets. And so they are becoming more aggressive, they're becoming more bold, they're making the right decisions, and they're not afraid of making technology bets on a different cloud providers and find a way to build the bridge versus, just because I'm with one hyperscaler, I have to have all of my workload there. That narrative that we had is getting changed especially for the smaller players. While the enterprises are still building that trust and relation that they have with the hyperscaler, and I think that is only getting bigger and better.
So just to continue with what you said, what unique value or benefits that people get from, players like DigitalOcean versus hyperscaler that they should, consider you, especially when we are looking at SMBs or individuals. We talked about, the whole conversation was about it, but it's more or less like summing up, hey, you know what, because of the pandemic, you suddenly have to accelerate your cloud journey. You also have to worry about, hey, you don't have all the technical know-hows. You also have to worry about cost, right? There is the bills will pile up. You won't realize that, okay, it's $1, $1, but that will pile up at the end. At the same time, you also don't need all the bells and whistles. So if I ask you to just summarize what benefit, what value you bring to customers that you should choose players like DigitalOcean versus big players, can you talk that?
Right. So I think the biggest value DO brings is simplicity to get started, the predictability of the pricing, right? So when you start on our platform, what your price is going to be today, what the price is going to be when you scale. And the day two experience that we talked about, right? That love and care when you're on the platform and growing together, helping you grow together your business, is an unmatchable value that we're able to provide to the set of customers who are looking to accelerate their digital transformation. And if you look at some of the innovations that we've made in the last couple of years, we're constantly striving on making the bets on the right technology to simplify the journey, right? We have this managed offering of Kubernetes, managed databases. We recently launched this app platform that allows customers to, just point us to their code and we take care of the entire lifecycle management. All of that with the same simplicity and a simple pricing.
So how do you really kind of curate your services? How do you evaluate latest technology? Because so much is happening in this space. Is it based on customer feedback or the demand from customer? Or you're like, hey, this is where things are moving. You guys are already ahead of the curve. So let's package and offer that as service. So I just want to understand how you curate your services.
Right. It's definitely, driven through customers' demand. It's definitely driven through what our customers need, right? It goes back to the point that I made about the product team philosophy, right? Be careful what you measure. So we intentionally listen to our customers. We intentionally talk to the SMBs, the startups, the individual developers, and see what their needs are. And that's how we curate our product portfolio versus just trying to catch on to the industry trend and see what the other hyperscalers are trying to do, because that's how we ended up with you end up with the 200 plus services, because they serve a different set of customers, and that's where you end up creating confusion, right? So staying focused, saying no to a few things, and knowing your audience and building for that has been how we've been innovating.
AJ, thank you so much for this. Was a very good discussion, not only from the perspective of DigitalOcean, to be honest, but from where the IT is heading. It's not going to be just a big giant public cloud. Of course, those players do want, everything should move to the big giant, but that is not the case. You use the term Omni Cloud, and that is where things are heading, where we use the right tool, right technology that makes sense and mix everything with each other. And that also makes it really important to have players like DigitalOcean, which not only allow you to leverage latest technologies, but also keep you kind of vendor neutral, right? You can mix and match, and you're also treated like a pet, not a ticket number. So AJ, once again, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to talk to you again.
Likewise, again, thank you for having me. This has been fantastic. So, looking forward to talking more. Thank you.